Have you ever heard of a place that everyone forgets? Raven's Hollow doesn't exist on any map, but I lived there. A town where bells don't ring, names vanish, and if you remember it, you disappear. My name is Caleb Becker. And this isn't a story, it's a warning. The year was 1892. Eleanor Whitmore, a young widow from Boston, arrived in the remote English village of Raven's Hollow, a place so old and forgotten it had vanished from most maps. She had inherited a large, decaying estate perched at the edge of a cliff, overlooking a forest perpetually wrapped in mist. The villagers greeted her with hushed voices and averted eyes. Their politeness was rehearsed, their smiles tight. When Eleanor asked about the old Whitmore house or her great-grandmother who once lived there, they simply turned away. Even the village priest, Father Altham, seemed afraid when she mentioned the name Whitmore. Before she left the church, he gave her a strange warning. If you hear the bell ring at night, Miss Whitmore, stay inside. Draw the curtains. Lock your doors. And no matter what you hear, do not answer if someone calls your name. Eleanor tried to laugh it off. Just local superstition, she thought. But that night, alone in the creaking halls of the house, something stirred. At midnight, the air turned bitter cold. Then, from the direction of the ruined chapel down the hill, she heard it. 3 slow chimes of an old iron bell. She froze. The sound was real, not a dream. Then came the footsteps, soft at first, then heavier, approaching the front door. And after that, a voice. Eleanor, open the door, darling, it's your grandmother. The voice, uncannily, was her mother's. But her mother had died when Eleanor was 17. Her hand trembled as it hovered over the doorknob. But something in her gut screamed at her to stop. She remembered Father Altham's words. She backed away and peeked through the curtains. Standing outside, barely visible in the moonlight, was an old woman. Her white hair hung long and tangled, her eyes completely black, void of anything human. Black mist oozed from her feet like oil, seeping into the ground. When Eleanor didn't open the door, the woman smiled, a terrible, knowing smile, and slowly faded back into the mist. That night, Eleanor didn't sleep. And in the morning, when she returned to the village to ask about the bell, the priest was gone. They told her he had left the night before. No one knew where. The next morning, Eleanor searched for answers. She returned to the church, hoping to speak again with Father Altham, but the doors were locked, and the stained glass windows covered from the inside with thick, yellowing cloth. A boy no older than 10 stood by the cemetery gate, watching her silently. "Are you looking for the priest?" he asked without blinking. "Yes," Eleanor replied. "Do you know where he went?" The boy stared for a moment too long before answering. He broke the rule. The bell rang for him. No one speaks of those who hear the 3rd chime. Before she could ask more, the boy ran off into the fog. That same afternoon, Eleanor explored the estate grounds. The garden had long since surrendered to the wild. Dead trees twisted like skeletal hands around the perimeter. In the back, nearly hidden by a crumbling hedge wall, she found an old bell tower. It leaned slightly to one side, choked by creeping ivy and moss. The door was sealed with rusted chains, but one chain had snapped, recently. She could still smell the oil on the broken link. Someone had been inside. She hesitated, then stepped closer. The air around the tower pulsed like a heartbeat. And when she touched the door, she heard it. A whisper. From inside. "Whitmore, the blood calls back." She stumbled away, heart pounding. The voice wasn't loud, yet it echoed in her skull like it had always been there, waiting. That night, she found an old journal hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the study. The leather cover was cracked and brittle, but inside was her great-grandmother's handwriting. The first page read, "They made a pact in blood. And now each generation must answer the bell. One by one. Until the debt is paid." Eleanor looked up. The room had grown colder again. The candle on her desk flickered, though the windows were shut tight. And then, without warning, the house's grandfather clock began to chime. Once, twice, 3 times. Eleanor stared at the door. Then came the knock. Slow. Measured. 3 times. And a whisper followed, so close it could have come from inside her own head. "Eleanor, may I come in now?" Eleanor did not open the door. She couldn't move. Her muscles locked tight, her breath shallow. The whisper still echoed in her mind, reverberating through her chest like a second heartbeat. "May I come in now?" Sounded kind, familiar, almost loving. That made it worse. After several minutes of silence, she found the strength to back away from the door. She didn't sleep that night, afraid that closing her eyes would be an invitation. Dawn came slow and gray, the sky overcast, the house colder than it had any right to be. She spent the morning going through the journal. Most of it was rambling, madness it seemed at first, mentions of the hollow, of the black bell, and of a binding pact made in the time of plague. But then she found a name, repeated over and over in the margins, carved even into the leather cover. Morgana Whitmore. Her great-grandmother. The journal told of a time when Raven's Hollow was ravaged by sickness. Bodies piled in the churchyard. The villagers begged for salvation. Morgana claimed she had found a way. She disappeared into the forest for 3 nights and returned with a solution. The sickness stopped. But the price was never written. That afternoon, Eleanor began tearing up the floorboards in the study. Something in her gut told her that whatever Morgana had done, whatever she had buried, would be found beneath. By candlelight she pried up the old wood. What she found beneath chilled her blood. Not stone, not dirt, but bones. Hundreds of them. Small, fragile, children's bones. She stumbled back, gagging, the candle slipping from her hand. The flame rolled across the floor, igniting the corner of an old rug, but the fire died immediately, like the air itself had swallowed it. Then she saw something move in the shadows between the beams. A slithering, a crawling. She held her breath. From the black space beneath the floor, 2 pale, childlike hands reached up and began to pull something toward the opening. Eleanor backed away, but a voice, not a whisper this time but a chorus, rose from below. "You are the last Whitmore. The bell has called you. Let us in." The room spun. Eleanor fled from the study, slamming the door behind her. She stuffed a chair under the knob, her hands shaking. And from within the walls, beneath the floor, behind the door, something knocked. Eleanor didn't leave the house the next morning. The sun was out, but the light felt wrong, like it had passed through something rotten before touching the earth. The air was still, unnaturally so. Even the birds had stopped singing. She returned to the journal, seeking any mention of the bones. There, buried deep in a page so stained it was nearly unreadable, she found it. To seal the pact, a doorway must be carved. Not in stone, not in the trees, but in flesh, in blood, in innocence. She turned the page. The hollow is not the forest. The hollow is beneath us, beneath the house. It listens. It hungers. It remembers the promise. Her breath caught in her throat. There had never been a basement in the house, at least not one she knew of. But Morgana's writing said otherwise. The bell calls not from the church, but from the hollow. Those it summons must answer. If they refuse, it will rise. By afternoon, Eleanor was in the library, searching for plans of the estate. Old blueprints. Anything. Behind a loose panel, she found something unexpected, a child's drawing. Crude, done in charcoal. It showed a black hole in the earth with figures crawling out. Above it, a bell tower. Below it, what looked like a woman, bound in roots. And beneath her, red eyes. Something clicked in Eleanor's memory. The tree in the garden. That gnarled, ancient oak with the rotting swing. It had always looked strange, too big, too old for the garden. She ran outside, heart racing. The wind picked up the moment she approached it. Leaves swirled around her feet. The base of the tree was wide and cracked, like a mouth yawning open. She knelt, brushing away dead branches until her hand struck metal. A ring, attached to a trapdoor. With effort she pulled it open. The wood beneath creaked violently. A foul smell rushed upward, thick and sweet and choking. She peered inside. Stairs. Stone. Descending into darkness. Then from far below the bell tolled. Once. Twice. She stepped back, trembling, but it was too late. The third chime echoed up the stairwell, followed by something else. A voice. Not a whisper. Not a chorus. A scream. And it was hers. Eleanor. Come see what Morgana left for you. The smell was unbearable, decay, damp soil, and something older. Something that had never known the sun. Eleanor held a kerosene lantern in her shaking hand as she stepped onto the stone stairs beneath the tree. The trapdoor groaned shut above her, muffling the wind, the world, the light. She was alone now. Only the low crackle of the flame remained. Each step she took echoed down into the dark. She counted them, 23, 24, 25, until she lost track. The staircase spiraled deeper than the house should have allowed. Eventually, the stone walls gave way to roots, slick and knotted, pulsing faintly. They clung to the walls like veins. Something lived here. When she finally reached the bottom, the hollow opened before her. was not a room. It was a chamber of earth and shadow, vast and silent. The ceiling was covered in bones, embedded in the dirt like stars in a black sky. In the center stood the remains of a stone altar, cracked down the middle. Bloodstains, impossibly fresh, still glistened. Behind the altar, something massive loomed in the dark. A bell. The same as the one in the church, but larger. Much larger. Black as obsidian, etched with runes that pulsed faintly red. It was suspended by nothing, floating, its clapper slowly swinging back and forth as if moved by invisible hands. Eleanor stepped closer. As she approached, she noticed figures carved into the walls, depictions of Whitmore women through the generations, all shown kneeling before the bell, offering something. Air. Blood. Infants. Suddenly, the flame in her lantern flickered violently. The air shifted. Something was moving behind her. She turned and saw her. Morgana Whitmore. Or what remained of her. She was impossibly tall, her bones elongated, her skin like wet parchment stretched too tightly. Her eyes were hollow, black pits that bled shadow. Her mouth hung open, filled with jagged teeth that did not belong in a human skull. Yet she smiled. "Welcome, child of my blood," she rasped. "The debt remains unpaid." Eleanor backed away, her lantern trembling in her grip. "You made a pact," she shouted. "You damned us all." Morgana tilted her head. "I saved them. 100 souls kept alive when the Hollow wanted more. But every bargain must be fed. And now, you must finish what I began." Suddenly the ground trembled. The bell tolled once, though the clapper hadn't moved. The walls pulsed. The roots writhed. The air filled with whispers rising into screams. And from the altar, hands began to reach out, dozens of them. Children's hands. Pulling, grasping, desperate. Morgana stepped forward, her voice a hiss. "Choose, Eleanor. One life for 100. Or the Hollow takes you all." Eleanor stumbled backward, the light from her lantern flickering wildly as the shadows around her thickened. The children's hands clawing from the altar were thin and brittle, but endless. Their cries filled the chamber, not with pain but with longing, a hunger that had no name. Morgana stepped closer, her towering form gliding rather than walking. Her voice was layered now, as if something beneath her skin was speaking too. "You were chosen the moment you were born. The last of our line. The blood must end or it must feed." Eleanor stared at the monstrous bell. Its surface no longer looked like iron, it pulsed like a beating heart. She saw her reflection in it, distorted, pale, marked. Her veins were dark beneath her skin, as if something had awakened inside her since she opened the Hollow. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "Neither did I," Morgana replied, her voice softening. "But I chose to carry the weight. Will you?" Eleanor's mind spun. A life for 100. A sacrifice to keep the Hollow from rising. But what if it was all a lie? What if there was another way? She looked again at the carvings on the wall. One of them, older than the others, showed Morgana refusing the bell. In the image, fire consumed her. Her body was torn by roots. And yet, beneath it was a symbol, a broken chain. A possibility? Eleanor reached into her coat and drew a small iron pendant, a family heirloom she had worn since childhood. Her mother once said it was the key to their protection. She had always thought it symbolic. Now she wasn't so sure. She stepped toward the bell. It loomed larger than anything she had ever known. Her breath caught as she raised the pendant and touched it to the surface of the bell. The moment metal met metal, a scream tore through the chamber. The bell shuddered. The carvings on its surface writhed like living things. The altar cracked again, and the children's hands recoiled, vanishing into the stone. Morgana shrieked, not in anger but in fear. "What have you done?" she cried. The pendant began to glow, searing hot in Eleanor's hand. She dropped it and it struck the earth with a sound like breaking glass. The roots above them convulsed, tearing loose from the walls. And for the first time the whispers fell silent. The bell rang once more, but this time it sounded like a cry of pain. Then it cracked, right down the center. The light went out. Total blackness. And then, a whisper. Not Morgana's. Not the children's. But something older. "You broke the pact, Eleanor. Now we rise." Eleanor woke to silence. Not peace silence. The kind that pressed against the eardrums and made the heart beat louder just to remind you were still alive. She was lying on the cold stone floor of the Hollow, the broken pieces of the bell scattered around her like black glass. Her lantern had shattered. The pendant that cracked the bell was gone, melted, it seemed, into the earth itself. Morgana was nowhere to be seen. But Eleanor knew she wasn't gone. She stood up slowly, limbs aching, and looked around. The carvings on the walls had changed. Where once there were Whitmore women kneeling, now they were screaming. Their faces twisted in agony, arms outstretched as if clawing to escape the stone. And in the center of it all, something new had emerged. A door. Not made of wood or stone, a door of shadow. It pulsed like a living wound, vertical, tall, framed by twisting root and bone. Symbols, new ones, burned around its edges. She could not read them, but they burned themselves into her mind. Behind the door she heard breathing. Slow. Massive. And then a whisper. Not a voice. A presence. She tried to contain us. You freed us. Eleanor backed away. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She climbed the stairs, nearly crawling, desperate for light, for air. When she emerged from beneath the tree, it was nearly dusk. But the world had changed. The sky was wrong, hazy red at the edges. The garden was dead. Not wilted. Not dry. Dead. Blackened vines strangled the fence. The swing on the tree moved slowly back and forth, though there was no wind. And on the front porch of the house, a figure stood. It looked like her mother. Same eyes. Same shape. But not. The smile was too wide. The shadow beneath her feet was too dark. Welcome back, Eleanor, the thing said. The hollow thanks you. Eleanor didn't move. Behind her, the ground near the tree split open. Roots emerged. Black. Wet. Writhing. The sky rumbled. And from the forest surrounding the estate, the bells began to ring. Not one. Many. All around. Calling. Summoning. The hollow was rising, and it was no longer alone. The bells rang into the night. Each chime was a ripple through the land. Trees twisted in place, branches warping like arms. The soil beneath Eleanor's feet trembled, and the sky bled from red to black. She didn't know where to run because it felt like the whole world was turning into the hollow. And the figure on the porch, the thing that looked like her mother, was still smiling. You did this, Eleanor. You broke the seal. We are free to remember. The voice was soft. Too soft. As though it had been spoken not into her ears, but into her bones. Eleanor took a step back. You're not my mother. The figure blinked. What? Slowly. No. But she offered herself to stop this once. We kept her. She screamed still. Suddenly the garden erupted. Black vines burst from the soil, twisting upward like snakes. One lashed toward Eleanor, narrowly missing her as she ran toward the house. The only place left that hadn't completely changed. Inside, the walls had aged 100 years. Wallpaper peeled away in sheets. Paint melted. Pictures blackened. Every mirror had shattered. The house had remembered what it was built to contain. She raced to the study, to the journal. Maybe something in Morgana's madness could help. But when she opened the pages, they were no longer empty. New entries had appeared. Written in handwriting that wasn't Morgana's, or hers. The hollow is not a place. It is a memory. It was buried beneath this land when the world was new. It feeds on pain, on promise, on blood. Each sacrifice a story. Each story a thread. You have stitched the final one. Eleanor's hands trembled. There is one door left to close. But the key must be taken willingly. The page turned by itself. A map. The estate, the garden, the altar below, and one location marked with blood-red ink. The Bell Forest. She'd heard the name once before. As a child. A place past the northern woods. Trees so dense, light never touched the floor. Locals said it was cursed. But now she understood. That forest wasn't where the hollow lived. It's where the hollow was born. Eleanor grabbed a lantern, a coat, and the journal. She would find the forest. She would find the final door. But as she opened the front door, she stopped. The swing on the tree had stopped moving. And someone was sitting in it. A child. Pale. Eyes like mirrors. Smiling. The child tilted their head and spoke in her voice. Don't go, Eleanor. We just started playing. The northern woods had always been quiet. Now they were dead. No birds. No wind. The trees leaned unnaturally toward one another, forming a canopy so thick that even moonlight dared not slip through. Eleanor's breath fogged in front of her despite the spring air. The hollow had touched this place long ago. She followed the map. The path was barely visible, overgrown, swallowed by time. Only the occasional symbol etched into tree bark guided her. Symbols she'd seen in the journal. Runes older than language. Runes of binding. But something had unbound them. As she moved deeper, Eleanor began to feel it. The shift. Time unraveled here. Her footsteps echoed ahead of her. Shadows moved backward. Once, she looked down and saw her own footprints walking in reverse toward the edge of the forest. The bell sounds were louder now, constant, overlapping, like a choir of metal singing to something buried beneath the trees. And then she saw the forest's heart. A clearing. In it stood 100 bells, all sizes, shapes, metals. Some old and cracked. Some new and glistening wet as if freshly forged. They hung from trees, from stone arches, from nothing at all. And they were ringing. Not from wind. From something below. Eleanor stepped into the clearing and immediately dropped to her knees. Visions hit her like waves. A woman giving birth beneath the soil. Children with no mouths digging tunnels with their fingers. A man ringing a bell made of his wife's bones. Morgana Whitmore screaming as her soul was torn in two. And then a voice. "You are the last." Eleanor looked up. At the center of the bell stood a mirror, tall, oval, framed in black vines. But it did not reflect her. It reflected a child, herself at age 6. Smiling. Holding a bell in her hands. "You rang the first bell, Eleanor," the child said, still smiling. "That's why we waited." "No," Eleanor whispered. "I was just a child. I don't remember. But we do." The bell stopped. The mirror cracked. And from it stepped herself, but not quite. Taller. Older. One. With black veins crawling up her neck. An echo of who she could become. "We tried to contain it," the echo said. "But there is no cage for memory. No seal for pain." Eleanor shook her head. "Then what am I supposed to do?" The echo stepped forward, placing a bell pendant into Eleanor's palm. "End the story. Ring the final bell. Or become part of the hollow, forever." And as she looked down at the pendant, she heard something behind her. The bells were beginning to speak. Not with sound. With names. Her mother. Morgana. Her own. The pendant in her hand pulsed with warmth, like a heartbeat. It was shaped like every bell in the clearing, but smaller, more delicate. On its surface was an inscription. "What is remembered cannot be buried." The other Eleanor, the echo, the possible future, stood silently beside her, watching. "What happens if I ring it?" Eleanor asked. "You end it, or you become it. The hollow is a hunger. It feeds on bloodlines, on pain, on story. Your family has fed it for centuries. But the line ends with you. The choice is yours." Eleanor looked around the clearing. The bells had stopped speaking. The air was still, like the whole forest was waiting. In her mind, flashes of everything that had happened. Morgana's haunted voice. The black-veined roots. The screaming children beneath the altar. The door of shadow that pulsed beneath the Whitmore estate. And the mirror child whispering, "You rang the first bell." But Eleanor had remembered something else, something deeper. A bedtime story her mother used to tell. About a woman who rang a bell to warn others of evil. Who gave her life so no one else would suffer. Her mother hadn't told her the story to comfort her. She'd told her the truth. Eleanor walked to the center of the clearing, where the largest bell stood. An obsidian thing with no clapper, silent for generations. She climbed its base and held the pendant to her chest. "If you do this," the echo warned, "you'll lose everything. Yourself. Your memories. Your name." Eleanor looked back, tears rising. Then maybe no one will ever have to remember this place again. She raised the pendant. And rang it. The sound was not metal. It was a scream folded inside thunder. It ripped through the trees, tore the sky open. The bells shattered one by one like glass. The forest convulsed. Roots shrieked. Shadows howled. And in the final moment, Eleanor saw them. Morgana. Her mother. The children. Smiling. Then, light. When she awoke, she was on a bus. No bells. No forest. Just the hum of an engine and the chatter of strangers. She blinked at the window. Outside, a sign passed. "Welcome to Raven's Hollow ST 1713. And just like that, it was starting again. But this time no one remembered. Not even her. His name was Cal Becker. 32, from Boston, here on a week-long photo assignment for a travel magazine doing a feature on forgotten towns of the Northeast. He'd picked Raven's Hollow from a list of names without much thought. It barely showed up on Google Maps. Even stranger, when he told locals in the nearby towns where he was headed, most gave him the same reaction. A pause. A blink. Then, never heard of it. But here it was. A quiet village at the edge of a dark forest. Cobblestone streets. Creaking wooden signs. Fog that never quite cleared. Quaint in the way that old towns were before tourism scrubbed them clean. It should have been perfect. Only, something was wrong. He felt it the second he stepped off the bus. A pressure. Like the air was denser here. Not polluted, just crowded. With something. He shrugged it off. Photographers were sensitive, that's what made them good. Cal checked into a tiny inn run by an old woman named Agnes. She had milky eyes and always seemed to be staring at something behind him. "Here for the woods?" she asked on the second day. He raised an eyebrow. "You mean the forest?" "Yes. It remembers." He laughed, uncomfortable. "Remembers what?" She didn't answer. That night, Cal walked the town, camera in hand. Took a few shots of the church, the old post office, a weathered statue of a woman holding a bell near the town square. That was odd. The statue had no plaque, no name. Just the image of a young woman, arm outstretched, a bell in her hand, face turned skyward as if screaming into the void. It was beautiful. He raised the camera and snapped a photo. The screen glitched. Just for a second. He looked down. The photo showed two people. The statue. And a woman standing behind it, pale, dark eyes, smiling. She hadn't been there. He looked around. No one. The camera was still warm in his hands. He looked through the viewfinder. The woman was still there. In the frame. Smiling. Even though she wasn't in the square at all. Then she lifted her hand. And rang a bell. Cal dropped the camera. Somewhere far off in the woods, a chime answered. The sound of bells. Cal didn't sleep that night. He tried. God, he tried. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, the woman behind the statue. Her pale face, dark smile, eyes that didn't reflect light. Eyes that looked through him. The photo was still on his camera. He must have stared at it 100 times, zooming in, trying to find flaws in the image, smudges, blur, tricks of exposure. But it was perfect. Too perfect. And each time he looked at it, she looked closer. By dawn, he couldn't take it anymore. He threw on his coat, camera bag slung over his shoulder, and stormed out into the morning mist. The statue was still there in the square, but alone this time. Cold stone. Harmless. He turned away, ready to leave the whole thing behind, maybe check out early and head to the next town. But then he saw something. The post office window. His photograph was taped to the glass from the inside. The one with the woman. And beneath it, a message scrawled in red marker. "Did you hear her too?" Cal froze. No one was around. Not a soul. He yanked open the post office door, but the bell above it didn't ring. No clerk. No sounds. Just old mail stacked behind the counter, most of it yellowed and unopened. A calendar on the wall still said 1994. He took a step forward and heard it. The faint sound of a bell. No, bells. Plural. Distant like from underground. Echoing faintly through the floorboards. He followed the sound to the back of the building, where he found a door slightly ajar. A rusted chain hung loose on the handle. Inside, stairs leading down. The sound was louder now. And then he smelled it. Soil. He descended slowly, camera raised. The light from his phone danced along old stone walls, scratched with symbols he didn't recognize. The stairs felt endless. At the bottom, a room. Circular. Carved into earth. Dozens of bells hung from the ceiling by decaying ropes. Each one etched with a name. Some were in Latin. Some in modern cursive. And one. Caleb Becker. His real name. Not just Cal. He staggered back. And then the bells rang. Not from movement. Not from wind. From memory. He saw flashes, his childhood fever when he nearly died. His mother whispering strange lullabies. The story of a girl who rang a bell to stop the shadows. A story he thought was fiction. Only, it wasn't. "You were chosen too," a voice whispered behind him. He turned. The woman from the photo was there. Smiling. Holding a bell. She didn't speak again. Not with her mouth. She rang the bell. And the sound wasn't heard, it was felt. Like a heartbeat skipping. Like a scream under the skin. Cal fell to his knees, vision blurring. Behind his eyes, images poured in. Children hammering bells into the earth to hold it down. Women in black veils, standing in a circle, chanting through time. Morgana Whitmore, eyes hollow, voice dry. It stirs when forgotten. And then, Cal's mother. Not as he remembered her. Younger. Standing in a clearing. Holding him as a baby. "You'll forget this town," she said to the shadows. "You'll forget me. But one day he'll come back. And he'll finish it." He gasped. No, she never. The woman before him, the bell maiden, lowered her bell. "It's not a curse, Cal. It's a system. A warning. The bells keep it below. But the cords are rotting. The names are fading." She turned and pointed to the bell with his full name, Caleb Becker. The rope above it was frayed, one strand away from snapping. "You were never supposed to remember." But the hollow does. Cal stumbled back. What do you mean it? It's not a who. It's not a what. It's a place that became a memory that became hungry. Every name it forgets, it replaces. And now it remembers you. Suddenly, silence. Then a low rumble beneath his feet. The bells began to sway. One fell, shattering. Another swung so violently it tore free and crashed to the ground, splitting the dirt. From that crack, a hand. Thin. Blackened. Fingers like roots. It reached toward Cal. The bell maiden grabbed his wrist. Run. Before it knows you're still awake. He ran. Up the stairs. Through the post office. Out into the town. Only, it wasn't the town anymore. Everything was slightly wrong. The colors were faded. The buildings too quiet. The statue was gone. And everyone on the street, no faces. Blurred. Unmoving. As if the town was holding its breath. Waiting to remember something. Waiting to remember him. Cal's shoes pounded the pavement as he ran from the square, his lungs burning, ears still echoing with the sound of the bells. He didn't know where he was going, he just knew he had to get out. He passed buildings he'd seen just yesterday, but now they looked older. Warped, as if someone had rewritten them from memory. Street signs were blank. Windows stared like black eyes. The air was heavy with that same crowded silence. At last he found the road out of town. Was there. Had to be. He'd taken it in on the bus. He remembered the curve, the rusted gas station, the trees arching overhead like a tunnel. But now, the road ended. Abruptly. As if it had been peeled away. In its place was a field. Overgrown. No tire tracks. No gravel. Just tall yellow grass swaying in wind that didn't touch his skin. He stepped into it anyway. And walked. 4 hours. At least it felt like hours. His phone was dead. His watch hands spun aimlessly, like they'd forgotten how time worked. The landscape never changed. Same grass. Same dead trees. Same crooked hill on the horizon. But then he saw it. A gas station. Exactly like the one near the town's edge. Same rusted pump. Same cracked Pepsi sign. Same crow perched on the roof. He had come full circle. Except he hadn't turned. His legs gave out. He dropped to his knees in the grass, panic clawing up his throat. That's when he saw the sign. Welcome to Ravens Hollow ST 1713. But this one was different. It looked new. Fresh paint. Wood still damp from the brush. And below the name, a handwritten line in black ink. You were always here, Caleb. He stumbled back, breath shallow. No, he whispered. No, I came on a bus. I had a contract. I picked this town. But the memory wouldn't come. When did he book the trip? Who gave him the assignment? He couldn't remember. All he remembered now was the bells. The sound echoed faintly through the grass. Coming closer. The inn looked exactly as it had when he arrived. That fact alone made Cal uneasy. The vines still clung to the brick. The porch light flickered lazily. But the air around it buzzed, like the moment before lightning strikes. He stepped inside. The bell above the door didn't ring. The lobby was empty, quiet except for the soft creak of an old rocking chair in the corner. Agnes sat there, waiting, as if she'd never left. You heard them, she said without turning. The bells, the names. Cal swallowed hard. What are they? Agnes finally looked at him. Her eyes, still milky, glinted with a depth they shouldn't have had, like she could see something behind him. The hollow is a wound, she said. A tear in what's real. It wasn't always like this. Once, this place was just a town. She motioned to the couch beside the fireplace. He didn't sit. Go on, he said. Tell me. She nodded slowly. Long ago, a girl disappeared. One of the first settlers' daughters. They searched for days, but all they found was her doll, and a trail of bells leading into the forest. They say she never truly left. That her soul sank into the ground and spread like mold beneath the town. Over time, people started vanishing. Or changing. To stop it, the women began a ritual. A bell for every life. A bell for every name. If the bells rang, the town would know. Something was stirring beneath. Cal felt cold all over. And the people? He asked. The ones who disappear? Agnes sighed. Not gone. Just rewritten. The hollow doesn't destroy, it records. Every story it eats becomes part of the town. The signs, the photos, the memories. That's why you're here, Caleb? He froze. She hadn't called him that before. You remember, she continued, which means it remembers you. And now that your name is on a bell, you can't leave. A long silence. Then she leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper. But you can end it. Cal's heart pounded. How? Agnes stood, slower than a shadow. You find the girl. The first one. The one whose name was never written. She's still down there. She pressed something into his hand. A pendant. A tiny bell. Ring it when you see her. And be sure, you're ready to forget. The forest behind the town wasn't on any map. But it was there, dense, ancient, quiet. So quiet it felt wrong. The kind of quiet that listens. Cal stood at its edge, Agnes pendant around his neck. The tiny bell never rang no matter how much it swayed. Not yet. It was waiting. He stepped in. The trees closed behind him like a mouth. As he walked, the woods changed. Trees leaned inward. Paths twisted, looped, disappeared behind him. The ground felt soft, not muddy but porous like walking on woven cloth. Eventually he found the well. Old stone. Covered in ivy. Deep, impossibly dark. He didn't hesitate. He climbed down. The descent took hours. Or minutes. Time cracked open inside this place. At some point, the rope turned into hair. Black, silky, endless. He let go. And landed gently on books. Thousands of them. Scattered across a floor of bone and moss. Open to pages that screamed when touched. Words that bled. He stepped carefully and each step echoed with voices. Eliza Whitmore, gone. But not gone. Daniel Pruitt, spoke out, silenced. Judith Harrow, rang the wrong bell. Caleb Becker, not yet. Then footsteps. Not his. He turned. The girl was there. 12, maybe younger. Bare feet. Pale skin. Hair like wet ink trailing behind her. No eyes, just hollows like they'd been drawn on with charcoal. And in her hand, a doll. Ragged. Headless. The pendant bell around his neck vibrated. But still didn't ring. Are you her? He asked. The first? She nodded once. I don't want to forget, Cal whispered. The girl reached out and for the first time her mouth moved. Then remember me. And the bell rang. Not a jingle. A shockwave. It tore through the cavern, cracking the ground. Books burst into flames. Voices screamed and fled. And Cal remembered everything. His mother's face. Her warnings. The stories. His own childhood drawings of a forest. The name he kept writing and never knew why. Annalise. You were my brother, the girl said. And the pendant bell turned black. The bell's final echo still rang inside Cal's skull as the ground beneath him crumbled. Not fell, peeled. Like the world was a page in a book too old to hold its binding. He tumbled into blackness. Not darkness, blackness. A space where light didn't dare. And then, a floor. Not earth. Not stone. Names. Carved, burned, etched, scratched into every surface. An endless hall of them. Each one glowing faintly, like a memory gasping for breath. The girl, Annalise, stood beside him now. But older. A teenager. Every time someone forgets, she said, her voice echoing as if from underwater, they come here. They live again, only in whispers. She stepped forward, trailing her hand across the names. You remembered me. That woke up the hollow. It's never forgotten anyone. It's just buried us under lies. Cal swallowed. What happens now? Annalise turned to him. You leave, and it starts again. Or, she pointed to a blank space on the wall. You stay, and take its name away. Its name? Annalise nodded slowly. The hollow was never a place. It was a child. The one who died before all of this began. But no one wrote her name down. That forgetting became this. The rot. The bells. Me. Write it, she whispered, and set it all free. Cal stared at the wall. The blank space shimmered, waiting. But something moved behind it. Something enormous. Crawling. Breathing. The hollow. Knew. A voice hissed through the space. Write her name and the cost is yours. Annalise looked back at him, tears in her empty eyes. You don't owe me that. But someone has to stop this. Cal reached into his coat. Pulled out a marker, something he forgot he'd packed. His hand shook. He wrote. Marin. The wall screamed. The names burned. And the hollow howled. When he woke he was in a field. Bright daylight. No signs of ruin. No bells. No names. Raven's Hollow no longer existed. There was no town. No records. No photos. But Cal remembered. And in his pocket was a single item. A pendant bell, cracked but silent. The hospital room was white. Too white. Cal blinked at the ceiling, its sterile tiles humming with fluorescent light. Somewhere, a machine beeped in rhythm with his heart. A nurse's voice murmured nearby. He was found just outside State Route 9, no ID, dehydrated, mumbling about bells and names. Might be a fugue state. Cal turned his head. A mirror on the far wall showed him a reflection that wasn't quite right. His eyes were older. His hair peppered with gray. How long was I gone? They brought in a psychologist. Asked him where he'd been. He told the truth. About Raven's Hollow. The bells. The names. The little girl. They smiled. Took notes. Later he heard them whisper. Could be trauma from a forgotten town incident. Maybe even dissociative identity disorder. Cal didn't argue. He just asked for a map. But on every map there was no Raven's Hollow. Not in the valley. Not near the forest. Not in any archive. Just empty land marked private property and no access. Still, something stayed with him. He heard bells and the hum of fluorescent lights. He saw missing people posters and felt like he knew their names. And sometimes when he passed a mirror he saw a girl behind him. Just for a second. Holding a doll. She never spoke. But she always smiled. Weeks later he received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside, a photograph. Faded. It showed him standing in front of the Raven's Hollow post office. Behind him Agnes. Smiling. On the back, scrawled in black ink. Just because they forget doesn't mean it never happened. And taped to the corner. A torn page from a guest book. With one name. Caleb Becker, room 3, checked in, never checked out. The envelope was yellowed, sealed with wax. No name, no address. Just left on Cal's apartment doorstep. Inside, a letter. I saw you in the photograph. You were there. So was I. You left something behind, Caleb. Something it still wants. Meet me where the road vanishes. At the bottom, a signature. E. Pruitt. Cal froze. Pruitt. He remembered the name, half burned into one of the books beneath the well. Daniel Pruitt. But he'd never seen an E. He rented a car and drove back to the place the hollow used to be. Just trees now. Just fences. But the road still bent unnaturally. Still felt wrong. At the edge of the tree line, a woman waited. Mid-30s. Dressed plainly. A silver bell hung from her wrist. She smiled as he approached. You really made it out, she said. And you? Cal asked. I was born there, she said. Before it unmade itself. I don't know how I got out. One day I woke up in a hospital in Albany. No records. No name. Just dreams. She paused. Dreams, and this. She held up the bell. It vibrated faintly, like it remembered. We're not the only ones, Caleb. The hollow fractured. The pieces are still echoing. Some of us hear them in dreams. Others, go back. Cal frowned. Go back. It's gone. She shook her head. You wrote the name that ended it. But that doesn't mean it can't rebuild. Places like that, they wait. She handed him a list. Names. Locations. Times. They're appearing again. Places that shouldn't exist. A school in Vermont where no students are enrolled, but voices echo from the gym. A motel in Kansas that resets every night at midnight. A town in Nebraska where no one casts shadows. You ended one hollow, she said. But maybe there are more. Cal looked at the list. And at the very bottom. Agnes, room 3 hollow reclaimed. The road to Nebraska was long. Endless cornfields. Skies too big. Silence too perfect. Cal drove without music. The pendant bell on the dashboard never moved, but he kept glancing at it. Waiting. The town wasn't on the GPS. But there it was. Neat houses. White fences. People mowing lawns. Children playing in yards. And not one of them had a shadow. Not a single one. He parked near a church with no cross and stepped out. People looked at him, but their eyes didn't follow. Like mannequins wired to smile but not see. Then he saw her. Agnes. Younger. Smiling. Standing on a porch like she'd never aged a day since the inn. You shouldn't have come, she said. This place, this is what it does now. It spreads. Changes shape. But the name still wants to be remembered. Cal stepped closer. I thought I ended it. Agnes shook her head slowly. You remembered the girl. But the hollow was always more than her. It was what people forgot. What they chose to forget. She handed him a book. No cover. He opened it. The pages were blank, until he blinked. Then his life spilled across them. Childhood. School. The moment his mother screamed when he disappeared. The night he first saw the map with no town. But the pages were fading. Turning gray at the edges. If no one remembers you, Caleb, Agnes whispered, you'll become part of it again. One last bell, she said. One last story. If you ring it, the hollow collapses. For real this time. But so will everything in it. All the names. Even yours. Cal felt the pendant bell tremble. He closed the book. Looked around. The sun was dimming. Shadows began to stretch. Too late, too long. And the town started to unravel. Houses folding inward. Streets bending like paper soaked in ink. People turned toward him now. Eyes empty. Mouths open. Chanting names. His name. Cal stepped into the center of the town square. Held the bell. And whispered one word. Remember. He rang it. The world broke. Later, somewhere else. A child opened a storybook. No title. Just the first line. In a place that no longer exists, a man gave up his name to save everyone else's. The child turned the page. And in the corner, almost invisible, was a name. Caleb Becker. And taped beside it, a cracked, silent bell.